Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Carl Leonard, Principal Security Analyst at Forcepoint Security Labs. Today I'm going to take you through our 2018 Security Predictions Report. Every year Forcepoint produces a predictions report and we're quite proud that we're quite accurate with our anticipation of the threats, the concerns and the risks that are posed to businesses over the forthcoming year. You will of course be able to access the report through our website, and I'll point you to the URL for that later on in the presentation. So let's take a look at our 2018 Security Predictions Report. This year we have 8 predictions for 2018. We're taking topics around privacy, encryption, the regulations around data protection. We're thinking about the next tactics that attackers will use in the forthcoming year around ransomware, around IoT. How are attackers currently collecting their ransom fees while they're using cryptocurrency? We've got a prediction around that as well. We've also got some lessons learned that we can apply going forward as a wake-up call for, say, data aggregators. We're also looking at the next phase of technology that businesses will look to understand, deploy in their business environments so they can better protect their employees, better protect their data. So a little bit about Forcepoint if you haven't heard of us already. We are transforming cybersecurity and we focus on what matters most. That's trying to understand people's intent as they interact with critical data and intellectual property. Our solutions allow our clients to empower their employees so that they have unobstructed access to confidential data while protecting your IP, your intellectual property, and simplifying compliance. Every year, as I've said, we build out our predictions reports. We're anticipating the threats and indeed areas of opportunity for the forthcoming year so that business leaders can be better guided to be more proactive, to build a better security posture. And it's typically in the November timeframe that we release our predictions, so look out for those in forthcoming years. As I've hinted, we're quite accurate with our predictions. We've recently reviewed our 2017 scorecard, and you can see a blog from me on blogs.forcepoint.com detailing how we did. We actually gave ourselves a B grade last year. There was a few items that didn't quite come true, but we were pretty much there. So as we go through and understand and try to explain the predictions for next year, keep a lookout throughout the year of when they come true. We've built this predictions report through the subject matter experts across our business. We've hooked up the Global Security Labs team, our Office of the CSO, Chief Security Officers, and our Chief Technology Officers around the world. Also pulling in insights from our recently created Innovation Labs team, who are really looking to the future as well in their day-to-day roles. So lots of subject matter experts have pulled together the main 8 areas that you need to take care of going forward into 2018. Let's take a look at the first one, entitled Privacy Fights Back. Well, what do we mean by this? In 2015, we predicted that the user's perceptions of privacy will begin to change as they try to understand the new environment in a post-privacy society. Really, the last 2 years we've seen an erosion in the formerly clean line between personal and public sphere and companies selling data. We're now seeing that in this post-privacy society where there is little expectation of privacy, as you and I were probably willing to share our email address in exchange for restaurant vouchers. We've probably got location services activated on our devices. And indeed, we probably allow various IoT devices in our home to understand when we are in the vicinity of our house, who is in the house, and all of this information that's now been collected. And we believe that privacy will fight back. Individuals will better seek to understand what data is being collected about them and endeavour to understand what that is and to control that. We will see a balance in the workplace between individuals' rights to privacy and the need for security. And you will see in our full report available on our website, we broke the areas down into 4 main topics. That of legal, technology and society implications, and also the political roles as well. We do actually have a section on the European Union General Data Protection Regulations, which surveys say could affect around 95% of businesses as they seek to look forward to that enforcement date in May 2018. More on that later. We've also got the European Union's e-privacy that looks into the area of browsing behaviour, cookie information, etc. And then also the NIST special publication, and specifically that of Special Publication 800-171 that guides suppliers to US federal organisations to adequately protect CUI, Controlled Unclassified Information. And that includes privacy of personal data as well. We will find that there will be a mash between people's private lives and in the workplace. And we've actually got a further prediction on that as well. In the political arena, we have seen governments discussing encryption, the role of encryption, how it may help them to understand communications between various groups, or not, as the case may be. This especially in the realms of cyber terrorism, where individuals are communicating over secure channels. Governments sometimes want to access that. So we're saying that for this prediction, privacy fights back. 2018 is going to be the year when the stars align to initiate what we're calling the privacy wars. Technologists, you and I, we're trying to protect our environments, will be pitted against the members of the public, and there will be differing opinions of privacy, but depending on the government arena, at work and in the home. Now, we've mentioned GDPR because that talks about data protection and the collection of that. And that brings us nicely onto our second prediction for 2018. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the date of 25th of May 2018, when this European-led regulation will affect global businesses that hold, or indeed process, personal data of any European Union resident. It will have far-reaching implications and impacts. Now, it might be the first regulation to set the bar so high, but indeed other countries, we predict, will follow the European Union to update their regulations around breach notification, certainly around breach discovery, and the essence of protecting personal data. Now, we can reference the 88-page regulation, and it's broken down by various articles. The closest definition we have to a personal data breach is that leading to the accidental or unlawful destruction, loss, alteration, unauthorized disclosure, or access to personal data. And this is personal data of European residents. Now, of course, there will be penalties for non-compliance, and we expect many businesses will not be ready prior to GDPR. They might be aware of the figures for the fines that might be enforced upon companies of 20 million euros or 4% of global turnover, whichever is higher. And in response to that, we believe that businesses will panic. They will implement very restrictive policies around the transmission of data, personal data, that will actually stifle their business as they struggle to become compliant with the new regulations on that enforcement date of 25th of May 2018. There's also an aspect here around individuals requesting information, understanding how their data is being processed, and access to that personal data. And many businesses don't necessarily have the process in place to be able to field those sorts of inquiries. In fact, we can look to other countries or jurisdictions that have implemented similar regulations in the past. And in fact, the Dutch DPA, the Dutch Data Protection Authority, they actually implemented a data breach notification law in 2016. Within the first 100 days of implementation of that notification law, they received 1,000 breach notifications. In the first 10 months, that was 4,000 breach notifications. Many businesses are going to be stunned by the impact that these regulations have on their business. Hopefully many of you, security professionals, are already on the path to adjusting your processes to understanding where your data resides and putting in place systems that you can handle the demands of the European Union General Data Protection Regulation. No matter where you are in the world, if you're processing the personal data of European Union residents. So preparation is absolutely key here. Just a quick nod to a ransomware. We've pasted the personal data breach definition there around alteration of data, and we're looking to the first milestone cases around a breach notification due to ransomware, and that ransomware encrypts your data and manipulates the data that you are holding, whether that's be in your on-premise systems or data stored in the cloud. And we're looking for those milestone cases in May and June, and really that's where businesses will probably start to respond to the impacts that they can see happening in the business environment due to this regulation. So our prediction for GDPR: most organisations are simply not ready for that enforcement date and will implement knee-jerk reactions, policies that will stifle their businesses. Now let's move on to our third prediction around the disruption of things. So pivoting off of the ransomware note there, we thought about how attackers could move from the laptop to other devices. We're all very familiar with WannaCry, Petya of this year that impacted hundreds of thousands of businesses around the world. IoT is a huge potential attack surface area. Gartner say that there will be 8.4 billion connected things. Now that's up 30% in just 1 year. We see this as a rapidly expanding attack vector as we deploy these IoT devices in our homes and in the workplace. We recommend that IoT security is viewed from 3 vantage points: that of securing your IoT device, securing the broader system of devices connected to those networks, and the data either stored on or transmitted by these IoT devices. And data really is at the core of the performance of these IoT systems. Without data, the devices are useless. Unfortunately, IoT malware has doubled from 2015 through to 2016 as well. So it's really important to understand the impact on these devices. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the term ransomware of things, ROT. We're saying that while the ransom of things is feasible, it might be unlikely in 2018. Mostly because the data held on these consumer devices isn't exceptionally valuable compared to other targets. However, it is definitely an attractive area for malware authors to consider attacking, simply because of the attack surface area, and also the fact that many devices are insecure. They are difficult to apply patches to. So an attacker with disruption on their mind could steal credentials, insert malware into these IoT systems, take down networks of insecure home routers, build botnets with the disadvantage that then harms the performance of the device for its original intended purpose. You can imagine how malware authors might infiltrate a refrigeration truck system of connected trucks, manipulate the temperature during the food supply process, thus spoiling the food, thus disrupting society. So we're predicting a disruption of things rather than a ransom of things into 2018. So how do attackers get their fee for ransomware? Well, we know they typically use cryptocurrency of some sort, whether that be Bitcoin, Monero, or other types of cryptocurrency that have become popular. Now, just for clarity and to make sure you understand what we mean by these definitions we're talking about in our report, cryptocurrency and blockchain, cryptocurrency is really a subset of digital currencies. It has the word crypto in there. It uses cryptography to secure transactions, to control creation of the assets, the coin, and to verify the transfer of those assets. And all this information is stored in a blockchain, which is essentially a list of records or blocks, a growing list of records that are, again, secured with cryptography. Each block links to the previous block, and the information stored is verifiable and permanent. And it's like a peer-to-peer type of network, and it's distributed ledger that records all of these transactions. Now, for an attacker, it's really difficult to break the cipher, as you can imagine. And so we're anticipating that it'll go for the weakest links in the systems, the supporting systems. And in fact, we've listed some examples in our report around Bitfinex in August of 2016, where that exchange for Bitcoin was breached. $72 million worth of Bitcoin was stolen, and actually the value of Bitcoin dropped. I think current market cap is around $100 billion. We also saw that the TrickBot, former banking Trojan, now expanding out in its intent. Traditionally known to target just the financial institutions, but now it's going after currency exchanges such as Coinbase in August of 2017. And we've also seen popular websites injected with code that would then mine cryptocurrencies. Mining, of course, is the proof of work action that you can do to contribute to the ledger, and then you're rewarded with coins. So we're expecting that for 2018, attackers are going to target the vulnerabilities in those systems which implement blockchain technology. So keep an eye out for that. We'll actually find that the findings of some research that has been done, one example was initiated by the US Senate, passed a bill, allocated funds to the US Department of Defense to investigate the impact of blockchain compromise. So expect attackers to pay attention to this going forward. So there's lots of data that we're talking about. You can probably see the theme around these predictions. We've only discussed 4. We've got another 4 to go for our 2018 predictions. Next up, we're going to talk about the collection of all of this data for legitimate purposes, and it's what's known as data aggregators. You're probably very familiar now with some of the credit reporting agencies. You may have become familiar with them in 2017, one of which was Equifax, notified of a breach in September of 2017. Now, these large breaches really tell us that no one is too big to fail, to make a mistake, to be breached. And it really is a wake-up call, not just for credit reporting agencies, but other data aggregators as well. In the cybercriminal environment, electronic health records, or EHR, and other similar records of personal data are often known as fulls. And fulls are simply a full set of information. And attackers correlate data, stolen data across various sources, bring them together to build up a complete record for personal identity theft. Data aggregators are legitimately collecting this information, and then their business model is to trade that data with other legitimate entities. But if an attacker could breach data aggregators, that would be a gold mine for them. And we're actually expecting that data aggregators are going to be breached using known attack methods. Not necessarily 0 days, not necessarily something terribly complex, but through a known vulnerability, an employee error, a misconfiguration, say. And we've seen lots of those with the Amazon S3 service, where their settings for default configuration can so easily be overlooked. Weak authentication. We've seen breaches as well in 2017 due to the lack of two-factor authentication and the inability for businesses to understand misuse of account credentials. If an attacker gets hold of a cloud account credential, they could easily move around that system, perform actions without being detected. We're recommending to work smarter, therefore, as you can't work harder. As security professionals, we're already putting the hours in, doing the best we can to secure our systems, our devices, secure our clients' data. We've really got to think of a new way to protect our organisations, knowing that even known attack vectors can be used for a breach. So keep an eye out for news of data aggregators being breached in 2018 using known attack methods. Now, quite often, the data that a data aggregator would store is accessible through an API. The data is often stored in the cloud. And there's lots of technology, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, that is helping to support this phenomenal shift to the cloud. I think most businesses are on their way to the cloud, or indeed already there. The huge uptick in user base for services like Microsoft's Office 365, touching on 100 million users in 2017. We have innovative end users in your employee base, bringing in cloud applications to your environment. Not necessarily sanctioned by the IT team, possibly very productive systems, possibly identifying a gap with your current IT offerings. And thus shadow IT becomes a popular conversation at the board level. Try to understand how to control that. So it's really important, therefore, to understand your access that has been granted to your users and how indeed they are moving data in and around your organization. Because of the correlation of data, the aggregation of data into the cloud, we're now thinking that cloud admin is the new domain admin. And a compromise of those cloud credentials can essentially grant access to a wealth of critical data. And thus we're seeing interest in solutions such as CASB, Cloud App Security Brokers, that really begin to understand that behaviour of end users. Now, as one is communicating with the cloud, we often encrypt that communication. In fact, 70 of the top 100 non-Google websites use HTTPS by default. That's Google's very own research. We're finding that HTTP Strict Transport Security, aka HSTS, is also being adopted in order to really address the problems of SSL stripping, protocol downgrades where an attacker would go from HTTPS to the less secure HTTP. HSTS has actually been established or known since 2012 in RFC 6797. So it really helps web servers to declare that web browsers should only interact with it using secure HTTPS connections. So as more websites move to HTTPS and systems use SSL, TLS, it's obviously harder to understand what is being shared across that secure tunnel because of the encryption. So many businesses are looking at what's known as SSL inspection technology to allow them to have that insight. And indeed, that's what we call man in the middle. Now, traditionally, man in the middle is where an attacker secretly relays and potentially alters the communication between two parties and sits in the middle of that communication. And then both those two parties don't know that their communication is being read and analysed. Man in the middle is actually used as part of legitimate SSL inspection so that businesses can really best understand what is being shared outside of their organisation, and you can then check for threats, you can block those, you can re-encrypt the data and then send it on its way. So man in the middle is actually used for good. But attackers are responding to this by changing their methods. We actually found that the Shifu banking Trojan would actually cease communication with its command and control servers if it observes that man in the middle was happening, this SSL inspection. Other malware has been using HTTPS for many years for their command and control. In fact, recent research in 2017 states that over a third of all malware is now using HTTPS for command and control communication. So it's really important for businesses to consider SSL inspection technologies, and really it's the only effective way to monitor traffic for network DLP, for CASB analysis. As I mentioned, attackers are looking for that SSL inspection and ceasing communication if they find that they could otherwise be found out, as it were. If they find there is no SSL inspection occurring, then they encrypt the traffic because they know that it won't be understood. So we're actually anticipating that an increasing amount of malware in 2018 will become man-in-the-middle aware. Now, as we've seen that end users are bringing cloud applications into the environment, we've got these privacy wars that we're expecting in 2018, pitting members of the public against governments and organisations who wish to understand what is happening in their environments to better protect their data, to secure their livelihoods, their profits. We're now seeing that workforce cyber defence, also called workforce monitoring, is going to become a top 3 priority as they aim to understand what we call the cyber continuum of intent. To understand accidental use, compromised end users, and malicious rogue employees that are operating within your environments. And in fact, it's really difficult for an attacker to impersonate user behaviour. Unfortunately, it's really easy to identify anomalies in the behaviour of end users. Now, I have just massively trivialised the effort that a tool such as user entity behaviour analytics goes to understand that baseline, to identify what is normal, and thus be able to identify what is abnormal. But it's much harder for an attacker to impersonate a particular user's behaviour. Imagine the types of news websites that you've bookmarked and you browse to in your lunchtime, your regular commute to work. You're probably working out of your phone versus your laptop at that time. Your commute always takes a certain amount of time. The way you sort of type on the keyboard is pretty consistent and probably has been for years. It's really difficult to impersonate that user behaviour. So we're thinking that the next giant leap for technology in response to everything we've discussed for our predictions thus far is that workforce cyber defence is going to move from niche to necessary. Essentially because one of the leading causes of data breaches is human error. Yet the traditional tools, our SIEMs, our EDRs, whitelisting and blacklisting tools can't really detect some of the mistakes that users make. And then, from a malicious perspective, you've got tools such as PowerShell, Mimikatz that end users have probably researched in order to figure out how to bypass traditional security products. So top 3 priority for CISOs in 2018 is to understand how to protect their environments and consider that insider threat, consider the cyber continuum of intent. Obviously lots more information in our full report, but hopefully you've been given a taster of what we think businesses will have to handle in 2018, how attackers are going to behave, how indeed your end users are going to behave. And as I reviewed our full complement of predictions pulled together by our security labs, our innovation labs, our CTO team, our CISO team, is that each prediction has a human aspect to it. Whether that be the humans, our employees interacting with data, the behaviour and intent of attackers. And thus it's really important to protect our people, our data, our critical data, and the networks and systems, whether that be IoT devices or traditional laptops. With the regulations enforcement dates in the near future, specifically around the European Union General Data Protection Regulations in May, you're going to have to understand how to shift your existing resources to accommodate this changing landscape and to make sure that you can respond accordingly and under the necessary time pressures as well. As of May 2018, it will be necessary to notify a breach within 72 hours of discovery. Now, we do have our full report available online at forcepoint.com/2018 predictions, and you'll be also able to see our social media interactions as well. So check out the Forcepoint Sec Twitter handle. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So hopefully that's given you a taster of our full report. So thank you very much for your time today. I do look forward to speaking to you soon, and do look out for our report card when we review the accuracy of our predictions as we go through the year in 2018. I wish you well in protecting your environments, and feel free to check out the forcepoint.com website for solutions that will allow you to best protect your intellectual property and protect your critical data. Thank you very much for your time today.